Okay, can everybody give a welcome to Rocky Anderson?
Oh.
If you could, actually, you have a different resume than most of the other people who are running, in that you've served time
How did you find out? That was supposed to be secret.
in public office. And I wondered if, as you talked about your background, you could specifically talk about how you were able to affect change as an elected official.
My whole adult life has been about bringing about change. That's why I went to law school. That's why I practiced law for 21 years. I had a lot of police abuse cases, a lot of prisoners cases, made some really important law for consumers. For instance, when I sued a local thrift and loan company, thrift and loan that went under and people were going to lose their lifetime savings. I made important law in a case that went to Utah Supreme Court where we vastly expanded the rights of inmates and their ability to collect compensation for abuses of those rights. For me, it was all about how much change I could bring about. That's why I was on the board and ultimately served as president of the board of the ACLU on a voluntary basis in Utah. I served on the board of Planned Parenthood Association of Utah, Common Cause, Guadalupe schools, providing extraordinary educational opportunities for young people. And so with that community experience and the demonstration of my commitment on these issues, even in Salt Lake City, I was able to establish not only a record of effectiveness, but of heartfelt commitment on these issues. So I ran for Congress in 1996. I won a very hard-fought primary race against the Democratic Party's chosen candidate, who was about as right-wing as most of these so-called Democrats coming out of Salt Lake City. And but I lost that race, and it's pretty much universally understood. I lost that race in 1996 because I stood up without any qualification for marriage equality. And that was in 1996. And I was proud to do it. I knew that I could lose the race because of it. And actually, I won the majority of voters in Salt Lake City in that race, but lost in the outlying county because of my position. But the way I explained it to my son, I'd rather be able to look myself in the mirror the rest of my life and know that I helped provide leadership on these issues of fundamental fairness and equality. And not only equality under the law, but equal dignity in our communities. So because I did that, and I didn't expect that I'd run for office again after that, but I did end up running for mayor. It was a much better job, frankly, than being in Congress. In my view, we were able to get a lot done. I was ranked one of the top 10 straight advocates for the GLBT community by the Human Rights Campaign. I won the World Leadership Award for our climate protection programs. I was ranked by Business Week as one of the top 20 activists in the world on climate change. LULAC, which is the largest Latino organization in the country, gave me their first ever Profile and Courage Award. I was also given the Presidential Award by the Association of Hispanic Publications for standing up for compassionate, reasonable immigration reform and to protect those immigrants that were targeted by the INS in Salt Lake City. So having done all this, and by the way, I was the only major city mayor in the country that advocated for the impeachment of George Bush and spoke around the country against our disastrous involvement in Iraq, this illegal, tragic war of aggression and the accompanying human rights abuses for the first time ever engaged in by our country as a matter of official policy. I did all this in my life because I firmly believed in these values that our country has sometimes failed to carry out, but we always strove for. We agreed as a people that these are things that we believe in. And my fear is now, especially with Obama, and we talk about him as a lot of people as the lesser of two evils, he's the more effective of two evils, because he ends up, when he signs off on legislation providing for the indefinite detention of anybody in the world, including U.S. citizens, with no semblance of due process, when he sends unmanned drones to nations without any congressional authorization for war and kills so many innocent people, he's able to do that because he is a Democrat, and the Democrats end up shutting up about it. They don't get out and raise hell about it like they ought to be, and this country has become so quiet during these 12 disastrous years, years in which our republic is being undermined. So my view is, whatever we do, you don't have to be in public office. Whatever you do in life, in your business, your community, your family, your church, your schools, all of us have a responsibility, however we can, to provide leadership and stand up against this insanity and stand up for what the promise of this nation was from the very beginning.
Well, we hear in this room a lot of the word socialism, and I think you have said publicly that you're not a socialist. And I'm wondering why the party should endorse someone for president who isn't.
Well, actually, I think we fundamentally agree, other than perhaps labels. It's a bit of a false dichotomy between capitalism and socialism, because it's clear that pure laissez-faire capitalism is a disaster. It ends up in crimes against the people of this country and around the world, whether it's the military-industrial complex, whether it's the deregulation. And by the way, it's these international institutions that contribute toward that every bit as much as it is the Congress people who have betrayed the American people with deregulation.
How would you distinguish your candidacy then from the so-called progressives in the Democratic Party or in the third parties like the Green Party?
Well, I don't see any progressives that still call themselves Democrats. They've got to be schizophrenic if they call themselves progressives and they're a member of a party that helps lead the way toward deregulation of our financial institutions, helps lead the way toward the greatest disparity in wealth and income ever in the history of this country since at least the 1920s. So I frankly think we are all on the same page. We're all after the same thing. I'm not for a centralized state control of every aspect of our economy. And as I said at the last debate of the Peace and Freedom Party, somebody talked about the new class. Well, Milovan Djilas in Yugoslavia, who was right-hand man to Tito, wrote a book entitled The New Class. He ended up serving a prison term for doing that. And what he said is, when you have it so centralized, you have one class take over and then they take upon themselves all the perks, and they're as abusive as anybody that preceded them. So what we need is a true social democracy. We need a nation where our government is looking out for the public interest in every instance. And we need to get back to the days of FDR, where we're increasing the wages, we're increasing job opportunities, and we have a progressive tax structure where the very wealthy are paying their fair share, and we're cutting out all this waste and abuse in the military budget. And please don't ever refer to it as the defense budget, because it's a total misnomer. There is hardly any defensive aspect to our military budget anymore. It's all about aggression, it's all about oppression, it's all about empire building.
And how about the Occupy movement? Do you see a role for that in pushing the issues that you're talking about and also in growing the party?
Absolutely. 3 years in a row, President Bush came to Salt Lake City, and I helped organize and spoke at demonstrations of thousands and thousands of people. And this was a broad-based movement. This wasn't just a sliver, and this goes to the question about these dichotomies. We can appeal to a broad base of the American people, and we can have real political power in this country. But what I said during those demonstrations is, yeah, you know, we're pointing the finger at Rumsfeld and Bush and Cheney over and over again. We need to point the finger at ourselves and wonder, why are we not shutting down the cities? Why aren't we blocking the roads? Why aren't we stopping munitions trains? Why aren't we out in the streets in every way possible during this insanity in this country? And I think the Occupy movement is exactly the kind of response this country needs. I think it's the healthiest thing that we've seen since the civil rights and anti-war movement in the 1960s, and we just need to make it more broad-based. We say it represents the 99%. Let's bring the 99% into this movement.
Now, I suspect you don't expect to be in the White House next January. So I'm wondering what you do expect to achieve from this campaign.
That's a great question. Win or lose this race, we're carrying on a national campaign. If you look at our website, check out the news. We've been on all sorts of national television programs, interviews, radio, television, newspaper coverage. It's not what we would like. I mean, we expect eventually to get more and more coverage. But as we reach out to the American people, we can create the momentum for a true people's movement. And it's not just going to be a sliver on the left. This is going to be a mass movement that truly brings about major changes in this country in terms of our war policies, in terms of our budget priorities, providing education, finding a resolution to this tragic student debt situation, where now student debt is greater in this country than the total of credit card debt, and Congress has made it non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. So there are some good examples of how third-party candidates, like Teddy Roosevelt with the Progressive Party when he ran, almost his entire platform ended up being implemented into law, even though he lost that race. The 8-hour workday, old age pensions, unemployment insurance, all of that came about because he advocated it. He brought the American people along, and there was that kind of demand that couldn't be resisted anymore. We saw the same thing with the impact of Ross Perot. If we get behind a strong national campaign, and that's the kind of campaign that we're running, we can bring about this change, win or lose this election. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.